Good afternoon, everyone. We will start in a few minutes. Allow me to give you some information about the event and the setup of this webinar. The webinar titles Harnessing Research, Technology and Innovation for Sustainable and Resilient Food Systems is organized by the Food and Water Security Office in the UAE, FWSO Regional Office for GCC States and Yemen, and UN Resident Coordinator's Office in the UAE. The event is organized also in the context of UN75 talks. We will discuss the role and contribution of research, technologies and innovation for food security, but also will inform about our project that we start on research, technology, innovation. We will exchange information on other relevant initiatives. After the welcoming remarks, the webinar will start with a moderated high-level panel discussion. We plan the high-level panel will last about 40 minutes. We will continue then with the second part of the event, which is the technical discussion, and itself it will serve as the inception workshop in the UAE for the project. Following introductory remarks and brief presentation on the project, we will have technical discussion session. This will also be moderated session, followed by question and answered, an interactive session through chat box. And last but not least, the concluding remarks will be also provided. Please be informed that English and Arabic interpretation is provided at this event. Please select your language choice under interpretation menu button. Please note that as you attendees, your microphone and cameras will be disabled, but we encourage you to use chat box and raise any comments or questions during this event you may have. Thank you. With this introduction, allow me to invite Dina Asaf, UN Resident Coordinator in the United Arab Emirates, for her welcoming remarks. Dr. Asaf, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Armin, much appreciated. And thank you first and foremost to you and to Dino, FAO at large, for organizing this very important UN75 dialogue. And I want to also acknowledge our esteemed panel, Her Excellency Mariam El-Meheri, Minister of State for Food and Water Security, and my UN colleagues in FAO, Maximo Kulin, who's our Chief Economist in FAO, and Mr. Serge Nakosi, Deputy Regional Representative for Near East and North Africa for the regional office of FAO. So we have a very good lineup, and I look forward to our discussion on this extremely important topic related to harnessing the research, technology, and innovation for sustainable and resilient food systems. And it's really important that it also allows us to ensure that as the UAE, that this type of engagement can also feed into, so for example, the Inception Workshop for the UAE, which has a project on strengthening research, technology, and innovation to enable food security, a high priority here in the UAE. So again, very much welcome this discussion. And I want to indicate to all that are listening, I hope you've been following us and the UN75 dialogues that we've had over the last several months. And you may recall that if you haven't, we have a YouTube channel with all this information that FAO organized actually a successful webinar back in October on the Well and Health approach, food safety and food systems. And as the United Nations in the UAE, in addition to all the United Nations across the world, we are commemorating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And as part of that, we are having consultations across the world and in the countries that we engage on various important issues for the countries that we work with. And in this effort, as the 75th anniversary of the UN was planned, of course, before this pandemic was upon us, We realized as the UN how important it is to commemorate our 75th anniversary with a global conversation on the world we want and building back better. And the pandemic has even made this now even much more important for all of us, as we've recognized where there are weaknesses and where there are areas that we can improve and what strengths we've had. And we want to make sure that to foster those even further. And this engagement today with the panel that we have further exemplifies the strong relationship between the UAE and FAO is on the topic of sustainable food and agriculture in the UAE. To be able to ensure an inclusive engagement, we need to also recognize the instrumental role of science and technology and innovation, as well as information and digital technologies as enablers of the 2030 Agenda. The importance of research, technology, and innovation for food systems, transformation, agricultural development, and sustainable management of natural resources cannot be overemphasized today. And as we've noted in the pandemic, the access to food became a key issue in many countries when lockdowns were happening and various restrictions were put in place. Here in the UAE, and I'm sure we'll hear from Her Excellency on the various steps that were taken in the UAE to address sustainable access to food in the country. And I know there were various measures being taken by the UAE leadership here to manage during this pandemic. But we've learned from this pandemic and we've learned where we can further strengthen. But to be able to take forward the transformation that is needed in food systems around the world, and in particular our region, as well as in the UAE, we have a variety of prerequisites that we need to ensure are in place. And of those, and you may in this discussion even identify others, ours is the strong leadership with a clear vision for research, technology, and innovation, being used as a driver for food systems transformation. And as I've already noted, this type of strong leadership and political will is evident in the UAE. And I commend them for recognizing the importance of that type of prioritization in the country. And we in the UN are very much happy to work with the UAE in this regard. And additionally, we need to recognize the importance of and the core role of research, technology, and innovation as drivers of food systems transformation. Coupled with that is national research and innovation strategies that help to define the vision and mission and priority areas, as well as investments and collaborations and other types of engagements that ensure that they are well aligned with national development agendas. Additionally, we have the fact that we need to be able to integrate this research, technology, and innovation into diverse disciplines and perspectives, and use system-based interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approaches to challenges that we need to address. We also need an enabling environment to support research, technology, and innovation, such as incentives, infrastructures, strong institutions, policy coherence, additionally ensuring the engagement of the private sector in its research engagement, as well as governance and other matters. And I'm sure these are some of the things that we will be talking about today. Again, this is a beeping for our session today. Sorry for that noise. And then additionally, I just would like to add the importance of strategic partnerships with regional and international research and innovation institutions. Because as the United Nations, we emphasize and re-emphasize the importance of engagement across and the togetherness for solving any problem. It's not the work of just one individual, one institution, one ministry, one country. And if anything, the pandemic has taught us it is the importance of our engagement together. And I think the topic of today is one that we all would agree is a global issue, regional issue, as well as a country issue, and one where we all coming together can make that difference. So Let's continue to work together, ensuring that no one is left behind, a very important motto for us as the UN. And I look forward to our discussions today. And thank you very much for joining us in this UN75 dialogue. And over to you, Armin and colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asaf, very much for your support and your time. With this, I allow me to invite Dino Francescuti, the Sub-Regional Coordinator for GCC states in Yemen, for his welcoming remarks. Please, Doctor.
Thank you, Armin. Great. Thank you so much, Dina, for your welcoming remarks. Her Excellency Mariam Al-Maheri, Minister of State for Food and Water Security of the United Arab Emirates, colleagues, Maximo Torero Cullen, Chief Economist of FAO, Serge Nakuzi, Deputy Regional Representative of FAO for the Near East and North Africa, and Officer in charge of the FAO Regional Office, distinguished panelists, distinguished participants. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. As mentioned already by Dina, we host this event in the context of the celebration of the United Nations and FAO 75th anniversary, which take place this year, 2020. For all the reasons we want to forget, but for sure for this reason is memorable. Today, we're also organizing the Inception Workshop for our project on research, technology, and innovation for food security in the UAE, coupled with a similar effort that we're doing with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. FAO Deputy Director General, Ms. Beth Bechdol, has expressed a strong interest and would have loved to join this important webinar, but she could not due to prior commitments. However, she is looking forward to the deliberations of our webinar. On behalf of FAO, I wish to express our appreciation to the United Arab Emirates for the long-standing and excellent collaboration. The partnership between FAO and the UAE aims to strengthen the sustainability of agriculture and food systems in the UAE and in the sub-region, foster innovation, technology sharing, and capacity development in the food and agriculture sectors, in line with the lead role that the UAE plays in the region and beyond, and contribute to the elimination of hunger and reduction of poverty in developing countries by improving agriculture, livelihoods, and food systems. Excellencies and participants, investment in research, technology, and innovation is increasing worldwide. Evidence suggests that investment in agricultural research generates significant economic returns, notably through its impact on productivity. Moreover, it delivers tremendous environmental and social benefits as well. FAO has developed a strong expertise in research and innovation in the agriculture sector. We believe that innovation in agriculture is the central driving force for achieving a world free of hunger and malnutrition. I am pleased to inform you that for the first time ever, FAO has a chief scientist and has established an office for innovation. The Office of Innovation will focus on integrating modern science and technology in all FAO programs to achieve better results. FAO's sub-regional office for the GCC states and Yemen is at the forefront of FAO's support to the UAE pioneering initiatives in technological innovation applied to the management of food systems, agriculture, and natural resources for sustainable growth. We work very closely with Her Excellency Mariam Al-Maheri and colleagues at the Food and Water Security Office in our efforts to contribute to the implementation of the National Food Security Strategy 2051. We have several ongoing cooperation initiatives that target aquaculture and livestock sectors, sustainable agriculture, food safety control assessment, nutrition and healthy diets, plant pest control, and planning for sustainable agricultural development. In the near future, we expect to expand our cooperation in well health approach and food losses and waste reduction. One of these initiatives is the project we have to discuss as well today on strengthening research, technology, and innovation to enable food security. This project is an important undertaking. The objective of the project is to develop the agenda for research, technology, and innovation that shall define the vision and mission of RTI, as we call it. Define priority areas and mechanisms for collaboration and cooperation, capacity strengthening, and private sector engagement. The development of the RTI agenda will be done by working together. We are welcoming you to join us on this important journey. Today marks also the inception workshop of this project, and we are pleased that many stakeholders are able to join this important event. The RTI project, as we call it, is a partnership with the Food and Water Security Office in the UAE and the Saudi Arabia Grains Organization in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It builds on shared interests, goals, and overall strategic directions for food security in both countries. For your information, we're planning a similar inception workshop in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia soon, inshallah, followed by a joint workshop later in 2021. I want to conclude by thanking all for attending this important event. We look forward to our active participation. Over to you, Arman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Francescuti. Just back, I'm thanking you and asking you to kindly invite our distinguished high-level panel.
Thank you, Armin. Thank you. Allow me then to invite to be connected Her Excellency Mariam Al-Mahdi, Mariam bin Mohammed Said Harab Al-Mahdi. She is the Minister of State of Food and Water Security, as we have mentioned, for the United Arab Emirates. Her Excellency chairs the Emirati Council for Food Security and the National Committee to Promote Technology-Based Agriculture, part of the discussion that we will have today. She is the UAE Line Minister for this or Designated Authority for FAO, and strong supported, let me add, strong supported for FAO global efforts on food security. Also, allow me to introduce Maximo Torero. We mentioned him. He is the Chief Economist for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, our organization. After a bright international career, including IFPRI and the World Bank, Maximo joined FAO in early last year, as Assistant Director General for the Economic and Social Development Department. He is now our Chief Economist. And also let me invite our colleague Serge Nakuzi, who is the Deputy FAO Regional Representative for the Near East and North Africa and Officer in charge of the FAO Regional Office. He has been with FAO for over 26 years, serving at FAO, at headquarters levels and in the field in various regional realities, and also including FAO Liaison Office with the United Nations in New York. So colleagues, welcome to this panel. It is a great honor to have you all today. What I would like to do is to address key questions to each one of you, so we can mark the discussion and set up the framework for the discussion on research, technology, and innovation to be followed by the technical panel. Allow me first to address the first question to Her Excellency, Mariam Al-Mahari. Your Excellency, this webinar will engage us in a dialogue about key aspects of the National Food Security Strategy 2051. Could you tell us in broad terms more about what the strategy involves? Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dino. Thank you to all our esteemed speakers, and I welcome everyone here to this exciting launch of the RTI agenda. So just to give the listeners a broad understanding on the National Food Security Strategy of the UAE. So the office was, or I was appointed in 2017, and that was when the office was set up. And it was the first time that the UAE gave the food security file or this dedicated file to a minister. So with that, the first thing we did was made a nation plan. So that was the National Food Security Strategy. And His Highness, upon giving me this file, said three things to me. He said, we need a plan. And he also said, we need to adopt technology and advance R&D. So already our leadership kind of set the scene with saying a plan, technology, and R&D. So this shows how important it is. So science, evidence-based policies, this is what our government really is pushing the bar on. So having the National Food Security Strategy in place, the strategy encompasses 5 strategic directions, one on facilitating agribusiness, the second on really boosting domestic production enabled with technology, the third being all about reducing food loss and food waste, the fourth about food safety and improving the nutritional intake of the community, and the fifth is about emergency preparedness. So you have these 5 strategic directions. The 5 enablers that cut across all these strategic directions is a good governance model, the R&D agenda, which we'll talk about more today, national capacity building, having sound data, and then also we call it the food movement. So this is about culture change, about our behavior around food. So the strategy in a nutshell, it can be found online on our website for anyone to download. It has 38 programs, 10 KPIs, and basically is our, let's say, plan on how we want to move forward to more resilient and more stronger, sustainable food systems in the future. And with that plan, we also try to make sure that we have a governance that can actually implement the strategy. The UAE being a country that imports most of its food, over the years had different aspects of the food security umbrella with different authorities. So for example, the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment are responsible for the farmer services. Then there's also the Ministry of Economy, which takes care of the price control. So what we did is we formed the Emirates Food Security Council. And this is basically our platform to be able to implement the strategy, monitor it, but also look at gaps and, let's say, barriers in the food security domain that we have to come up with solutions for. Thanks. I hope that made sense.
Thank you, Her Excellency. Thank you. Very good. Allow me then to address a first question to Maximo. Dear Maximo, innovation is at the heart of FAO strategic framework for sustainable and food secured world for all. Technology and innovation are among the 4 accelerators of all programmatic interventions. What is FAO's vision on research, technology, and innovation as key enablers for building more resilient agri-food systems and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals? Over to you, Maximo.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to this. It's a pleasure to be here. Innovation, as you know, is a core element right now in the strategy of FAO. Essentially, the only way we can achieve or accelerate our progress to maximize the achievement of SDG, especially SDG 1, 2, and SDG 10, which is on inequality, is based on what we call our accelerators. And our accelerators are data, big data, innovation, technology, and what we call complements, which I will explain in a few minutes. So innovation is always in data, of course, technology. So it's central because productivity growth in agriculture is based on harnessing science and innovation, and this includes better crop varieties and animal breeds, improved farm management techniques, and more efficient irrigation, better applications to techniques for pesticides or fertilizers, vaccination, or feeding practices. But it also includes different social, organizational, or institutional processes, ranging from access to markets, credit or extension services, to marketing produce in any new way. And it has been shown that harnessing technological innovation to raise productivity made the most important contribution to saving natural resources. For instance, the technologies of the first green revolution estimated to have saved 900 million of hectares of agricultural equivalent to the entire land of the mass of the USA. So raising productivity is central, but today we also need to be sure that we raise productivity with the least cost and in an efficient way in terms of assuring sustainability of our natural resources. And that's what we call minimization of trade-offs. So in our strategy, what we are aiming is to accelerate this process of innovation, but be sure that we have attached to it the good governance, good institutions, and the proper human capital. That for us is the only way we can assure that we're going to achieve the goal that we are aiming. The challenges in the future are extremely important. We have today, in 2019, 690 million people in undernourishment, and 3 billion people that couldn't have access to healthy diets. COVID-19 has exacerbated even more the situation, increasing in 135 million people more going into undernourishment. And of course, it will increase the cost of healthy diets, but it will also exacerbate the importance of inequalities, which if we don't resolve inequality, especially in the rural areas where agriculture is at the core, then we won't be able to achieve a sustainable accomplishment of SDG 1 and SDG 2. So our challenge for the future is to change the way productive gains are created. In principle, we want to use our resources, inputs such as water, fertilizers, antibiotics, pesticides, in a more efficient way that will assure that we comply with sustainability. We need to reduce physical inputs and improve the way we optimize their use. That means allocate them in a more efficient way. And that means getting the bigger bang for the buck, or more crop for the drop. Is the only way we will able to achieve this goal. So innovation could create this, but it needs to be together with these complements of governance, institutions, and human capital. If we don't bring them together, then we will be in a problem, because we won't be minimizing those trade-offs that any innovation will create, and we won't be able to achieve it in a sustainable way in all the dimensions of sustainability. And that's why FAO is pushing these accelerators, where big data, innovation, technology, together with the complements, are part of the core of any program activity that we will do to achieve SDG 1, SDG 2, and SDG 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Maximo. Great to hear about your views and the relevance of these accelerators that we're talking about. Now, allow me to invite Serge Nakuzi, our Deputy Regional Representative for the Near East and North Africa. Allow me to address one question for you, Serge. The International Forum on Innovation in Agri-Food Systems to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals in the NENA region just wrapped up, in recent weeks even, we could even say. What are the main recommendations for public policies to unlock the potential for research, technology, and innovation for food security? Over to you, Serge. You're muted, sorry.
Good afternoon, and it gives me a great pleasure this afternoon to be amongst the distinguished panelists and all of you at this extremely important event. Certainly, in response to your question, Dino, I should point out that following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic this year and the subsequent postponement of the 2020 International Forum on Innovation in Agri-Food Systems to achieve the SDGs that had been scheduled earlier in the year, FAO and the key partners concerned, and these comprise notably the Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the UN ESQA, ICADA, ICBA, ITU, IFAD, and the World Bank. We co-organized a series of 10 innovative Zoominars focusing on the role of innovation and digital technologies in increasing the resilience of smallholders so as to address the adverse impacts of the pandemic. The Zoominar sessions brought together more than 2,000 participants from the public and private sectors, including youth and women innovation actors, producer organizations, civil society researchers, and international development partners from across the Near East and North Africa region and beyond. Now, the Zoominars led to a number of key policy recommendations. Allow me to just cite a few. Firstly, encouraging and supporting the development and adoption of national digital technology and e-agriculture strategies, so as to provide advisory and service delivery tools and approaches, as well as to promote digital innovations and solutions for smallholders. Secondly, investing in building the basic digital infrastructure and creating the minimum conditions required to use technology so as to facilitate digital agricultural transformation. And thirdly, seizing the momentum created by the COVID pandemic to modernize, extension, and strengthen the advisory service in the Near East and North Africa region based on digital innovations, thus facilitating information dissemination and exchange for farming and rural communities, as well as encouraging digital agripreneurship and innovation and the use of the internet, mobile and social networks amongst farmers and agricultural extension officers. Now, other important and key recommendations emanating from these Zoominar sessions included notably increase investment in agricultural research for innovation to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and encourage partnership between the public and private sectors. To develop an agri-tech toolbox to support the SMEs, farmers, and policymakers in identifying the most relevant technologies and strengthening the local technological capacities. To adapt innovation and digital technologies to the needs and conditions of small-scale farmers and to local agriculture and food systems in our region. And most importantly, to harness the digital and social innovation for financial inclusion and social protection, and to guide governments towards a robust plan of action on innovation and social protection. Now, these sessions also called for digital technologies to be introduced as the preferred approach to reduce food losses and waste, and optimize and improve the processes involved from production to post-harvest practices across all subsectors in the agriculture value chain. They also called for a culture of entrepreneurship be promoted in agri-tech and rural technologies through the establishment of startup incubators and improving the ease of doing business for the private sector and strengthening the producer organizations. And last but not least, calling for an enabling environment to be created to operate and use the new ICT applications, along with access to digital infrastructure, as well as enhancing increased investments in agri-food systems in our region, as well as in youth and women-led agribusiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. This gives the opportunity now to come back to Her Excellency. In the benefit of time, allow me to address one more question to you, Her Excellency. Allow me to refer to the agtech sector on this occasion. And Your Excellency, your office is placing a strong emphasis on the promotion and development of the agtech sector as a solution to the UAE food security challenges. What are examples of agtech that are being promoted in the UAE and expected impacts of food security that we would like to see in the UAE? Over to you, Her Excellency.
Thank you, Dino. So going through what we've been through in the past few months have really sort of made us reflect a little bit more and reprioritize what programs we really want to accelerate. Especially, we all know that we've been, in a way, the whole world has been shaken by this global pandemic, and the SDGs are still in front of us, and we kind of want to get back onto track and accelerate whatever we can to achieve the 2030 agenda. So for us, the ag tech sector was something we said, this is an area that we really need to develop further, because technology has now enabled us to be able to grow certain things sustainably in hot, arid environments such as the UAE. When we think of examples such as the CEA, so Controlled Environment Agriculture, we see a lot of examples, whether it's a vertical farm growing leafy greens or microgreens, whether it's a horizontal high-tech farm, it's a closed environment growing tomatoes or high value vegetables, whether it's a recirculating aquaculture system, a RAS system that's growing fish. We're currently growing salmon, sea bass, sea bream, the grouper hamur. So all these, you find a lot of examples now here in the UAE, because we really have in the last few years put a lot of effort in trying to change the blueprint of the country to develop the ag tech sector. Things like developing a license dedicated to ag tech, things like building standards for CEAs, things like ensuring there's a financial means when somebody wants to set up an ag tech facility. So these are all fundamental things we're thinking about, and we're making sure it's there to be able to grow an ag tech sector. And for those of you living in the UAE, we're already seeing a lot of things that we didn't see many years ago. So things like salmon grown here in the UAE, quinoa, blueberries. These are all things that, or foods that we hadn't seen before, but because of technology, we are able to grow them. An example going through the pandemic is just that people started looking a little bit more on their behavior around food. People started asking, what can we do to work towards better behavior around food? So buying local was a big motto as well. And people were surprised at what they actually found was growing locally. I mean, kale, for example, is a superfood that we were importing a lot of, but it had no taste. But kale produced here in the UAE, and that's just been freshly harvested, tastes very, very different. So buying local was a big motto that we talked about. Also reducing food loss and food waste. We used let's say, this shift of behavior to kind of promote what we want to promote for sustainable food systems. So this is growing the ag tech sector. Also, not forgetting on the research and development side, you know, if I may just add a few more highlights on that. To be able to grow an ag tech sector, you need that R&D arm. And the UAE is really taking a lot of steps now to advance R&D. Abu Dhabi have put together a fund of about $1.5 billion for R&D in food systems. $100 million was given to 4 global ag tech companies in the beginning of the year, with another $41 million given to or for ag tech capacities just a few weeks ago. So a lot of funding is being put down to really push the R&D agenda when it comes to food systems. Also, as many of you know, we have the International Center for Biocell and Agriculture, ICBA, that's doing a lot of research on crop resilience, or let's say what crops can grow in marginal environments, and using the know-how and the knowledge in that to help developing countries, smallholder farmers. We also have the Marine Innovation Park, which is currently being constructed. This will be, in a way, our research nucleus or research development nucleus for innovation for the blue economy for the UAE. So pushing aquaculture, looking at novel marine products, etc. So there's a lot of exciting things happening here in the UAE as we become a hub for innovation and technology. And as Maximo also mentioned, we need to kind of open the eyes of the youth. If we don't make this an exciting sector with technology and innovation, it's very difficult to pull the youth into this sector. So we're saying you love food, you love technology, let's bring on board the agri-technologists. We don't mention farmers. It's kind of make it a bit more exciting for the youth to look at this with a new pair of eyes. And I think this is really important moving forward. The Agenda 2030, it's not far, and it's really important that we use innovation, we use technology, we get the youth on board to try and get them excited and enticed to come into this sector. We launched the Food Tech Challenge, which was launched last year. The winners were announced just a few weeks ago. Again, this was to get the global community to read about the UAE, read about its challenges, and come up with technology-based solutions. The UAE has just announced a new, it's called Feeding the Next Billion prize. This is with the X Prize. It's a 4-year competition to look at alternative proteins. So lots happening here to become a hub of technology and innovation to really drive the research, technology, and innovation agenda.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing all these views, Her Excellency. Now let me come back to Maximo. Maximo, can we talk about, to set the stage, building on FAO's rich experience, what are the main lessons learned in terms of policy governance, responsible investments, and development cooperation to harness the potential for research, technology, and innovation to build resilient agri-food systems? Over to you.
Thank you. Let me first start that it's a pleasure for me to be here with Mariam and what they are doing in the UAE, because it's amazing the change and the transformation they are doing. And this, I think, is part of the response to your question. We have to follow a holistic approach, and it's a moving target. Innovation, the beauty of innovation is that there is not a fixed point. No? You keep innovating and you keep creating new ideas, and it's like a box that doesn't have an end. You continue, and depending on the challenge that you are facing. So I think one of the lessons learned is that we need flexibility. We need to understand how the world is operating and what are the challenges and how we need to resolve those. And those are moving targets. It keeps changing all the time. And we need to find a way to have a holistic strategy that could allow us to create the capabilities that are needed and could allow us to create the returns of that innovation, because normally it could take time. It's something, research and development takes time to pay off. And we need to have the understanding of what is the major priorities and the major horizons we want to create and to change in the future, because it's not something necessarily that will happen over the night. And that's where serious investment is required. And that's what we are observing in the UAE. And that's something that we need to also, as FAO, being able to do, because we want to achieve SDG 1, 2, and 10. And those are very difficult SDGs. SDG 10 inequality, very few people are looking at it, very few institutions are looking at it. We have created the challenge for us to also look at inequality, because the aim for us is we can move people out of poverty in the short term. We can move people out of undernourishment, but if we don't resolve inequality, we're not moving them in a sustainable way. And that's the big challenge, I think, and that's the responsibility we want to take over. So what we have learned also is that the governance and the institutions are needed and need to be there. But also we have learned that we need to learn from practices and from what other countries have been doing. We need to leapfrog. We cannot repeat mistakes because we don't have resources. Developing countries don't have the resources to repeat mistakes. And given the technology and the velocity in which especially digital technologies are moving, we need to be prepared for that, and we need to be prepared to leapfrog. And the only way we can leapfrog is by documenting the processes and what other countries have done. So for us, any South-South learning, North-South learning, East-to-West learning, whatever type of learning will be extremely important, because it will allow us to help countries that are members of FAO to learn from the mistakes of others and to be able to leapfrog and trying to accelerate the process of innovation. Why is this so important? Let me just bring what is happening today as a result of COVID-19, digital technologies. They are moving at a velocity that we were not expecting. We are meeting now in Zoom. 6-8 months ago, this was not happening. Okay, and imagine what is happening in agriculture, how agriculture is being revolutionized. E-commerce is one, but also we have automation, which automation is becoming accelerated in the ways that we have never seen before. Now, if we don't come quickly with responses and learning from other institutions, from other countries of what they have done to respond to that, what will be the problem at the end? It will be an increase in inequality because there will be few big players that will control everything. There will be a problem of labor supply and labor demand. Why? Because automation will require new skills in people, new capabilities that we have not brought yet to these capabilities, the youth that Mariam was talking about. We need to prepare that youth. In Africa, we have a huge surplus of labor, but if this youth is not prepared to be absorbed by these new requirements of this new labor demand of the digital technologies, of the automation process, then they're going to lose their jobs, so they're not going to get a job, and the old generations are going to lose their jobs. So we need to accelerate that process, and that's what we mean by governance, institutions, and capabilities. We need to have that in place. Those are the important complements. And that, I think, is very clear for us, and that's something where we need to accelerate the efforts today. If not, we're going to, innovation could create inequality, could create differences, could create exclusion, and could create a problem of labor market, which we cannot afford at this time such a problem. The second element, which I think is really important, is we need to be responsible in what type of investment we do in agriculture. And for that, there are 10 principles of responsible investment in agriculture that was developed by the Committee on World Food Security, which are very clear and have been supported by the G20 of Saudi Arabia, and is what we need to keep pushing. Every investment we do in the agricultural sector, in the agribusiness sector, needs to follow those principles, and we need to keep supporting and bringing evidence why it's so important. Because the investment has to be responsible to be able to achieve what we want in terms of reducing food insecurity, but also assuring sustainability in the use of our natural resources, but also inequity among the households and the rural areas we are operating. The third element is that we need cooperation, and we need to work together, because what we learn in this type of activities of innovation and data and digital technologies is that the complementarities are huge. And if we don't coordinate and have coherence in policies and coordination among agencies, we won't be able to be successful. I think one of the successes behind what is happening in UA is the coordination. You have this coordination among different institutions that allow you to gain the complementarities. That could be the big win, because you gain a lot of efficiencies by complementing and coordinating. It's simple. If you put a road, it's the best opportunity to deploy a fiber optics. If you deploy fiber optics, then it's cheaper, and then you can have access to internet. No? So those two simple complementarities of two types of infrastructure are huge. And imagine in agriculture, no? All the things that we can do once we have deployed digital technologies, extension services, e-phyto, many mechanisms to assure and improve the way we operate. So I think the coherence and complementarities are central to be able to achieve that. And the final thing is that this is not a short-term issue. It is a medium and long-term issue, and requires thinking carefully what are the priorities, how we need to invest, how much we need to invest, and what we expect from those investments, and be very careful in tracking and monitoring so that we can assure that we do the corrective actions so that we achieve the goals we want to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Maximo. This is very enlightening. I mean, we do all agree this is a long-term challenge, but there are steps to take. I mean, one after the other, you know, there are clear steps, and we can see already, many of them already have been taken and generating great impact. Let me come now to Serge for a second question, and that would give us the opportunity to start wrapping up our panel, high-level panel. Serge, allow me to ask this question for you. What roles should the UN agencies, governments, international research and innovation organizations, and the private sector play in terms of technology and innovation to help meet the sustainable development goals in agriculture? Over to you, Serge.
Well, Dino, innovation in agriculture cuts across all dimensions of the production cycle and along the entire value chain, from crop, forestry, fishery, or livestock production to the management of inputs to market access. This has an impact on SDG 2, which notably focuses on zero hunger, for which FAO is responsible, but also on the other SDGs, as Maximo was alluding to. FAO assists its member countries in unlocking the potential of innovation to drive food and agriculture transformation, to lead to socioeconomic growth, ensure food and nutrition security, and alleviate poverty and improve resilience to climate change, thereby helping to achieve the sustainable development goals in what we hope to be an impactful and sustainable manner. It is worth noting that following extensive consultations that have been conducted recently with the FAO members, FAO developed and launched the strategy for the private sector engagement 2021-2025, which was approved by the FAO Council last week. The strategy itself will seek to promote a more proactive and catalytic role for the organization and support of its membership by setting out a clear path towards more innovative partnerships with the private sector. The strategy also strives amongst its targets to develop principle-based, purpose-driven partnerships that will hopefully deliver meaningful impact that leaves no one behind, respecting the guidelines on a principle-based approach to the cooperation between the United Nations and the business sector. I should add that in our region, we give a particular attention to the rural youth, women and farmers organizations, given their roles in the innovation process. We heard from Her Excellency how important the youth is. Maximo underscored that the youth is certainly a significant proportion of our population in this region and in other regions as well. And they are critical in promoting and forging a clear path towards the use of innovation to optimize our impact in terms of sustainable agriculture and achieving our ultimate goal of a world without hunger in all its forms, malnutrition and rural poverty. Because innovation is complex and it's a complex process where governments and other key stakeholders play different roles, FAO focuses on a system-wide approach involving complex partnerships with all the private sector and public institutions concerned. The regional initiative that we had launched here in this region on small-scale family farmers across the Near East and North Africa region has been coordinating to date all of the efforts that we have been leading on agri-food systems innovation in close partnership with other UN sister organizations such as IFAD, UNESCO, ITU, and the World Bank, and many other partners, both in the public and private sectors. Now, it is important that we leverage the capacities and capabilities of all our partners. There are different roles that can be played, and we have heard the commendable example that we have from the UAE about what is envisaged and what is being done in this, in reinforcing the research and development RTI and securing greater governance and strengthening the institutions, the investments that's being undertaken, the reinforcing of infrastructures, and the provision of incentives to the private sector. But UN agencies also have to harness their collective capabilities in order to make a sustainable impact in development. It is extremely important that we leverage our respective capacities and that we work in unison and in a close alignment of our technical cooperation efforts to reinforce further the national research, technology, and innovation agenda. Equally, international research and innovation organizations can align their research and innovation portfolio with the overall RTI objectives through knowledge generation on science-based innovations and the transference of that knowledge. And certainly the private sector, where it can provide huge investments, as we have heard, in our region and well beyond. And this certainly should continue. The private sector, the R&D, as well as the more governmental R&Ds would benefit if aligning more their business plans towards the overarching goals of the national RTI agenda, and that we can certainly align our vision of all these partners to secure a greater impact on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serge, for sharing your vision on this important aspects. I would love to continue our discussion at this among these distinguished panelists, but we also want to give sufficient room to our technical discussion, to the technical panel. So let me conclude by thanking you so much for being available to think together with us, to set the stage, and allow our colleagues that will be going deeper into our specific actions that we're planning, and setting up the first step toward a common area of work, considering that we will continue working at your level, with Her Excellency, with our distinguished managers from FAO, and at the technical level as well. We have a long way forward, as Maximo has underscored, but an exciting way forward. Let me thank you once again and give the floor back to Armen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dino. If I may just say a big thank you to the FAO and all the teams behind and making this happen. I think this is also a great way to show how we are collaborating and coordinating with the FAO and also with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and aligning agendas such as the RTI. I think this is a great example of how you take something on a national level and take it regionally as well. So I think this is a great example of doing that. So the more the merrier, and I think the cooperation, as Maximo mentioned and Serge also mentioned, cooperation is key for us to be able to achieve the Agenda 2030. And I think this is a great example of this kind of cooperation. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow also on behalf of our team, thank you, Your Excellency, and Maximo, Serge, Dino, for your encouragement to us. And I see we start collecting a lot of interesting question and answers that will be covered the next session, but also I read in the chat that we are having other participants beyond the UAE. I read here that some ideas you mentioned will be insightful also for countries like Bangladesh. So with this, allow me to announce the start of the technical panel session. It will be itself the inception workshop for the project. And I'm very pleased to invite Fatima Al-Mula, Senior Research Analyst, Food and Water Security Office in the UAE, for her introductory remarks. Thank you, Fatima.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Arman, and thank you to all the panelists who have joined us today. My name is Fatima Mullah, and I'm a Senior Research Analyst at the Food Security Office. And I would just like to say thank you for joining us today and to welcome you to the R&D Inception Workshop, which forms part of the UAE's project on strengthening research, technology, and innovation to enable food security, which is a project that we are working with in collaboration with the FAO and with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Organized in the context of the UN75 talks, this session aims to outline how we can best utilize innovation and technology to strengthen our food ecosystems across the region, and how stakeholders can work together to create synergies to ensure future that is food secure for all. I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to the participants of this session for taking their time to join us today. And I would like to introduce you back to Arman, who will give you a brief on the RTI project before we go into the technical workshop. I would encourage everybody to join us and give their insights. If you have any comments, please use the chat. Any questions as well, which we will be taking. It will be very useful for us in developing and continuing our project. So thank you. Arman, back to you.
Thank you very much, Fatima. Thank you very much. So my name is Arman Sedrakian. I am economist in the sub-regional office for GCC states and Yemen. I will have a very brief presentation for you informing about the project. Allow me first to share my screen, if you can see it. Can you see my screen? Very well. So we're continuing with the technical discussion session, and actually it will serve also the inception workshop in the UAE for the project that is titled Strengthening Research, Technology and Innovation to Enable Food Security. The project actually is building on the cooperation between Food and Water Security Office in the UAE and the collaboration with Saudi Grains Organization in the KSA. It actually builds on this shared interest and
yes,
objectives.
in the Q&A.
Yes. Fatima, you mentioned something?
That wasn't me, Arman.
Yeah, okay. So the project is building on the partnership between two countries, KSA and UAE, and building on the shared goals and interest objectives towards strengthening the research, technology, and innovation. And in front of the project, it is as a task and objective is to develop the agenda for research, technology, and innovation. So the project is actually benefiting from the very good context, I would say, as the high-level panel discussed. We have in both countries the leaders incentivizing the transition towards more sustainable food systems, and a big interest is given to all efforts to transform the food systems. And the project actually involves a lot of stakeholders from multiple disciplines, but not only stakeholders, but it covers many sectors. The main actually efforts within the project is to discuss the enablers and disablers, the opportunities for building the effective RTI. And we actually will be doing a number of workshops and engagements at technical levels with many stakeholders, including academia, civil society organizations, the farmers, the producers, the private sectors, and so on. So as a first start, we will be organizing 3 workshops. This is the number one in its series in the UAE. We will organize another one in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia soon, and later a joint event will follow next year, early next year. So as Her Excellency actually mentioned in her answering one of the questions, the UAE has very strong and very comprehensive national food security towards 2051. And it has a vision to become a world leading hub in innovation-driven food security. It has 5 strategic directions facilitating global agribusiness trade and diversity, enhancing sustainable technology-enabled domestic food supply across the value chains. The third objective is to reduce food loss and waste. Fourth is sustain food safety and improve nutritional intake. And fifth, the strategic direction is to enhance capacity to respond to food security risks and crises. And strategy actually is benefiting from 5 enablers identified. And one of them is explicitly referring to R&D development. So this project is highly benefiting from this context that we have and the interest in the country. So the key question would be what the project itself can contribute to improving strategic frameworks. First of all, it aims to identify areas that RTI can fill through multi-stakeholder workshop and foresight of ambitious alternatives. So not only we aim to bring and facilitate technical dialogue and discussion, but building on the insight and lessons and analysis, the project will aim to discuss and debate and find some solutions, alternatives on technologies. And the project actually will try to mainstream the food systems approach into these policies while discussing all the components of the food system, starting from production to consumption. But also, it will be important for the project to try to cover some issues that are very important in the context of both countries. And particularly, the project will focus on some analysis related to food loss and waste, as was mentioned, is an important issue in the country, but also issues related to dryland agriculture and technologies and innovations and practices around this. Very important, the issue of water and food nexus and energy nexus. And of course, innovative and cutting-edge agriculture technologies of relevance to the countries. So how the project is going to facilitate this process and to implement, we anticipate to have 3 outputs in 5 steps. The first set of output steps will be actually covering the assessment and analysis. So we would like to understand not only what is happening, but why it is happening. So we'll do an assessment of the situation. We will try to assess and understand the best practices related to research technology of innovation in relevance to KSA and UAE. And as I mentioned, the assessment will also cover the alternative solutions and will look at the foresight scenarios on specific technologies that would be in interest. And this information and insights will actually allow to draft and offer a strategy document as an agenda and a roadmap for implementation. Of course, this process will be validated through a number of workshops, and the final workshop to identify and agree upon objectives, targets, and the way forward in terms of implementing it. And of course, as an agenda, it will be actually built on a well-designed and identified monitoring and evaluation system. So you may contact us at the following email of the sub-regional office later on, and we will be very happy to answering your questions. And with this, allow me to pass on the floor to my colleague Abdullah Suley Musa, who will be moderating the technical panel discussion. Abdullah, over to you to invite the technical panelists.
Thank you very much, Armen. Assalamu alaikum, ahlan bikum, and welcome to our colleagues. It gives me a great pleasure to moderate the technical session. My name is Abdullah Saleh Musa. I'm the Natural Resource Officer based here at FAO Sub-Regional Office in Abu Dhabi. I would like just to also remind colleagues that the chat box is still open should you wish to raise any specific question for the high-level panel, but also, from the presentation that Armen did right now. As Fatima mentioned, this technical session aims basically to launch officially this project, and more specifically to serve as a platform for interactive and inclusive discussion about LTI in the UAE. The high-level panel was very enlightening, and it has set the ground for this technical session. It has been a privilege to listen to the conversation with Her Excellency and also the esteemed panelists. So thank you very much for lightening the way ahead for this project. And thank you also to Armen for the presentation on the LTI project. I see that we are a bit behind time, so I would save time and then move straight forward to our technical panel discussion. And we are also delighted for this technical panel to have eminent specialist and then researcher on research, technology, and innovation. Let me start by introducing very briefly, again for the sake of time, our distinguished panelists. We have on this panel 4 colleagues, researcher and scientist. We have Professor Salvaraju Ramasamy, who is the head of the Research and Extension Unit at the FAO's office in headquarters. We have Professor Banu Chaudhry, who is the Dean at the College of Food and Agriculture at the United Arab Emirates University here in Abu Dhabi. We have also Dr. Ala Juma, who is the Technical Director at the Abu Dhabi Authority for Food Safety, at the Abu Dhabi Agriculture and Food Safety Authority. And we have also Dr. Seta Tutujan, I apologize for the pronunciation, who is the Director of Program at ICBA, joining us today. So thank you very much, colleagues, for making time to join us in this important conversation. So we will have also for this technical panel discussion 2 rounds of question. Hopefully we will be able to complete that by 5 o'clock to allow a more interactive session with the participants. I just want to remind that we have about 120 participants, but right now we have about 100 participants. So we really want to have also a window to allow participants to be able to contribute meaningfully to this discussion. I will start with Professor Salvaraju from FAO headquarters. Just building on the high-level panel, we heard this afternoon from Massimo Torero and also from Serge, how important is innovation in the FAO strategic framework. And the research and the extension unit has been at the forefront for many years in supporting countries to strengthen their research, technology, and innovation capacity, but also policies. From these experiences, and also looking at what we are aiming to do in the UAE and then in KSA, what are some of the main lessons from this work which you believe would really be guiding us for a successful development of the LTI agenda in the context of UAE? Over to you, Professor Salvaraju.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you, everybody, for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences and lessons learned from our support to the members, especially in the context of development of RTA agendas at the country level. Excellencies, panelists, and participants, as it was mentioned many times during the high-level panel, I would like to reiterate the fact that research, technology, and innovation can contribute substantially for much needed transformation of agri-food systems. But as we all aware that business as usual approach is not enough to harness this potential that RTI can offer to us. There is a need to move from incremental to transformational change by accelerating and scaling up research and innovation by leveraging emerging opportunities from RTI for achieving the SDG agenda. FAO has been, as Abdullah already mentioned, FAO has been supporting members on RTI related priorities for several years. I would like to highlight three main lessons as it was suggested from our experiences. The first one is identification of relevant entry points at the country level to develop RTA agenda is very important because RTA agenda cuts across several technical aspects and also institutions at various levels. There are a number of activities to be followed to develop a comprehensive RTA agenda, as you all aware. And I would like to highlight some of these activities that include assessment of current situation and emerging trends of RTI, as it was already mentioned by Armin during his presentation, that a systematic procedure that we follow to develop the RTA agenda for UAE as well as for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as part of this project. Benchmarking of best practices on RTI for food security and cutting across many different technical areas of work is also very important. Identification of priority areas, both medium-term as well as long-term priority areas, is crucial. Identification of key institutions that can support the development of RTA agenda and also its implementation. All these activities should be coordinated and championed by a relevant a single agency so that everybody, they have the legitimate function to get together the different actors so that there should be a complementarity and coherence with respect to the support at the country level. And thus, identification of an appropriate entry point at the beginning of the RTA roadmap process is very important. This we have observed in many countries, being a sectoral support to the member countries. It is extremely important that the identification of the priorities in agriculture and food security sector also align to the broader national level RTA agenda. The second lesson that we have learned from our experiences is that effective implementation of RTA agenda needs strengthening of the capacity of various actors within the agricultural innovation system perspective. For agricultural innovation systems, we take into consideration of several actors, including the agricultural education, agriculture research, extension and advisory services, business enterprises, farmers organizations, and also farmers themselves. We have identified three levels of capacity development needs within the process. The first one is strengthening innovation partnerships at the local level, and who are all the main actors at the local level and who can promote and trigger the innovation process, though it is a continuous process, but there should be some level of engagement of different actors focusing on a particular issue to be addressed. And the second is strengthening, the second level of capacity development is strengthening capacity of innovation support services at the institutional level. And mostly they are innovation support services. This can be from agriculture research. This can also be from agricultural extension and advisory services. This can also come from private sector, non-governmental agencies, etc. And the third capacity development need is linking them to better inform policy processes at the national level. So how the different processes, both the innovation niche partnership at the local level, capacity development to the agricultural innovation support services, and how this can feed into the national policy processes, which is very important. Third lesson that we have learned from this, our support to the members, is that we need to ensure evidence-based dialogue for influencing the policy processes so that RTI is high in the agenda. This needs several intermediary steps to be addressed. Those intermediary steps may include, but not limited to, assessment of roles and responsibilities of various actors, perceived and actual gaps, both at functional as well as the technical levels, because functional is often ignored. Functional capacity development or functional, the way they collaborate with each other, the way they come together to address a specific issue is often overlooked, focusing more on the technical issues rather than the functional capacity. So perceived and actual gaps at the functional level is also important. Preparation of priority list of interventions and its budget requirements, key actors for implementation of the RTI agenda and clear role perceptions, and preparation of detailed RTI profiles for the country focusing on agriculture and food security. So these are all some of the activities are needed to make sure that the evidence-based dialogue to influence the policy processes that is highly relevant to address the ground reality. All these elements are critical to feed into the policy dialogue processes to provide necessary enabling environment and also ensure that sustainable agriculture and food security perspectives are explicitly part of the RTI agenda. So given these lessons, I think there are many, but these three lessons are, I believe that this is most important ones in the process of developing RTI agenda, as well as to support the implementation of the priorities identified through the RTI agenda. And with this, we are looking forward to supporting the development of RTI agenda and also its implementation in UAE and also broader context in the region, because the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is also part of this project. Thank you very much for your attention. And over to you, Abdullah.
Thank you very much, Selvaraju, for sharing this. As you mentioned, there are many lessons, that can be taken, from FAO's rich experience, in supporting countries to harness research, technology, and innovation. I will just randomly pick one. You mentioned a couple of times, capacity development. You mentioned strengthening extension, strengthening education. You, I think, to some extent also alluded, to the youth. And the previous high-level panel also mentioned the importance of engaging the youth in this conversation. So now allow me to turn towards Professor Banu, Dean of the College of Food and Agriculture. We have heard during the high-level panel about the R&D agenda from Her Excellency Miriam. And Professor Selvaraju mentioned right now about capacity development, about education. So from your perspective, human capital is extremely important and is at the core of innovation. What are some of those capacity gaps and challenges for strengthening RTI in the UAE? Over to you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, and thanks to Dino also for this invitation. It's really my privilege to be a part of this distinguished panel. Excellencies and distinguished guests and participants, I'm really happy to be a part of the discussion. So coming to the point that you mentioned just now, I think so most of the panelists up till now have really pointed to youth as extremely important for implementing this research, technology, and innovation related matters. And they are indeed at the center, because they are not only at the receiving end of things, but they will also in the future deliver whatever is being given to them. And they are the ones who will be innovating. So focusing on them and making sure that they get the best is extremely important. When we are thinking about capacity building, we would like to make sure that this youth gets the highest level of expertise right in the beginning, so they're exposed in the best way. We are thinking in terms of creating a high-skilled workforce for the future, so that agriculture really advances. Agriculture both on the plant side and also on the animal side. And the ultimate goal is to create future leaders who can engage in innovation, future leaders who can engage in discovery, and who can take education and technical advancement even to the next stage. So what is extremely important for these tech-savvy, digitalized youth? And that's something we need to remember. We need to match their level of knowledge in these areas. At the same time, we need to match their hunger, because if we try to show them a plow, they will say, I don't need to be a farmer. But if we show them iPad, if we talk about artificial intelligence, if we talk about the cutting edge technology, they will suddenly be very much interested in all these things. So what we are talking about over here is providing ideal ecosystem for generating their interest, making them breed into excellence, and also promoting creativity and allowing them to be critical thinkers. And today's youth really wants that. We really need to do things with our hands. I mean, we can always imagine that we can take them to the classrooms and try to do things over there. It's not the classrooms. From classroom, it is to the lab. From lab, it is to the farm. And once they see it and start doing it with their own hands, and they see technology engaged into it, they will automatically start engaging into, okay, here is a challenge, and I can do it with all these new technologies that are available. So technology breeds interest, technology breeds advancement, technology breeds efficiency. And if we can expose our youth in the academic environment to all these things, they will really excel. One very good example I really want to present over here is that in today's environment, if you go to the youth and say that we want to teach you agriculture, and their interest will be, if not muted, it will be lukewarm. It will be lukewarm. The extraordinary thing which UAE has started is that there is an agriculture academy that has been established over here, and almost 16 schools are engaged into it. And already people have started talking about agriculture. Go to today's youth and talk with them about food security. In today's environment, very few of them will be able to understand it. UAE has taken a very important step to instill into them very early on at the school level that agriculture is important. The Agriculture Academy is giving them the base, showing them the way, showing them there is vocational education, there is research, there is technical. So they're exposing them already early on. And this sets the stage for them to come to places like ours in higher education, where they can get exposed to something better. Of course, one very important thing is we have to make sure in educational institution that academia matches the advancements which today's industry has on a daily basis. And that bridge needs to be established. And if there is a gap, that gap needs to be patched to make sure that the interest of this youth to become future leaders is met. Thank you, Abdullah.
Well, thank you very much, Professor, for eloquently talking about youth and then innovation in the agricultural sector. I would again go back to Professor Ramasami's presentation again to pick one of the main lessons learned from FAO's rich experience. He mentioned also extension and advisory services. So now my question to Dr. Ala Juma, who is the Director of Technical Services at the Abu Dhabi Agriculture and Food Safety Authority, known as DAFSA. Her Excellency in the high-level panel mentioned very strong examples, of agtech, which are being promoted in the UAE. Working, with farmers, the Director of Technical Services, including extension advisory services. What are some of the main challenges, at the farm level, for the adoption, of these, agtech technologies in the UAE? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Abdul Hai. Good evening, everybody. Actually, when it comes to farms, and here we are talking about traditional farms. In UAE, we have around 35,000 farms. Actually, those farms, they are operating in like a harsh environment framework. Here we are, talking about, a very high summer temperature and humidity also. Very poor sandy soil with very low organic matters, also high pH and high salinity. Very scarce water resources and even depleting groundwater resources with high salinity. In Abu Dhabi alone, we have 24,000 farms. More than 11,000 of them have access, to very high saline water, which is above 10,000 parts per million there. So in such harsh environment, technology is a must actually. So we see that the technology and the agri-tech is the solutions, to overcome such big challenges. But the question comes, why the farmers are slow in adopting technologies? Here, because the technology has a cost actually, and this cost should be justified when the farmers are adopting technologies there. So there are certain challenges, facing the introduction and the adoption of technologies in traditional farms. And from my point of view, I see maybe the first and the most important one is the market. In the UAE, maybe we have a special case. We are a bit different than Saudi Arabia and the other parts of the world. We have very open economy, very open market. There is no any, let me see, restrictions on boards in terms of quota or enforcing high standards on border or even anti-dumping measures there. So we have very free trade, and the wholesalers actually, they have their own sources of imports of fresh produce, and normally they are giving priority to this produce to have their position on the shelves there, leaving very small room for the local produce. The other important issue here also is that the imports of fresh produce that's highly consumed, or the largely consumed in the market, it came with very low prices compared to the cost of production in UAE. So in most times it comes very much lower than the cost of production. And here the competition of the local produce in the market is very difficult, very hard. And when you paying costs for technology, it's become not just, it's not justified for the farmers to invest on. The key challenges facing this expansion of the production base, of the agricultural production base, is much more related, to market and the competitiveness of local fresh produce versus the imported ones, rather than, the access to technology. The technology is there, and but the cost of the technology is not justified. And in order to empower the adoption of technology, we have to have a certain level of protection of the local produce, or find like a market for it. So here, Excellency, she mentioned the very good examples of adopting agri-tech with entrepreneurs and commercial farms there. And those startups or those entrepreneurs, they adopted technology and they are targeting, let me say, premium products with high value that's imported, or to substitute those premium products that's imported from Europe with high cost. So this is a niche market actually, and to some extent it's become almost saturated right now. So for traditional farms, we need to find a solution for the market in order to help them to adopt technology. This is one issue. The second important issue is the economy of scale, actually, which is the most important also. Here, the farms in UAE are almost small, with an average 2 to 3 hectares per farm, and almost half of these farms, the operating farms is planted with date palm. So the available area for introducing, for example, other fresh produce is very small, and it's not encouraging introduce of mechanization and technologies because of the scale actually of production. And another important issue is that there is no well-defined strategy for agri-tech adoption there. In order to help farmers or assist them to adopt such technologies, we have to have a well-defined strategy. We have to identify the list of the crops that we would like to increase our self-sufficiency of it, and for each crop or group of crops, we have to identify the appropriate technologies and build clusters around them. As our colleague said at the beginning, he said the technology is should be along the whole supply chain. You should build a cluster to make the technology available and affordable to farmers in all stages. So if you import only one technology from abroad, and you don't have the maintenance, you don't have the good quality of seeds and the pesticides and the fertilizers, even the pre-cooling, the dosing system, etc. So the farmers will not be able, to improve their position in the market and their competitiveness in the market. We have to look at this issue in terms of clustering and provide like a holistic approach for adopting technologies for traditional farming. Other issues is, the support service in terms of extension services, research, and access to finance or loans or credit. The technology is expensive, and the farmers actually they should have access to loans, credits, and even soft loans, depending on the situation. And we should have much more professional support service in terms of extension and the linkages between extension and research. This is the most important, actually. In order, to provide the technical support, the appropriate advice and assistance to the farmers and build their capacity to absorb the technology and successfully managing, the adoption of technologies in the farm. And maybe, a last point, which I see it's also, hindering the adoption of technologies is, that we have farm owners rather than farmers actually here. The farmers or the farm owners, they are not depending, solely on their farms for their livelihood. And they are actually depending mainly on expat, unskilled workers for operating these farms. Those unskilled labor actually, majority of them are illiterate, and it's very difficult to train them and to raise their capacity to a level that they can manage high technologies like a fully computerized greenhouse or closed system or etc. There. So technology also needs support from this side actually.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alajuma, for this. Just maybe to pick, some of the elements you mentioned about, access, to technology, the cost, of technology. Again, you mentioned, supporting extension, building, the capacities, linking, research, to extension, and fundamentally also you touched, on the issue related, to a strategy. I do believe that, we would have to address, all those, elements, as we engage in the implementation of this project. Let me just open a very short window. One of the comments, from the chat box from Mr. Abdulaziz Nyan, sorry for the pronunciation. He wrote the potentials, to unlock and opportunities to yet be exploited, still exist. I salute the LTI initiative, praise the organizers' visionary mindset, and express the ICARDA's keenness to participate in the planning process and contribute. Just one second, and contribute. Just one second. And contribute to the implementation of this project. So that actually make very good transition to now discuss, the role and cooperation with international and regional research, and innovation organization. And we are delighted, to have with us this afternoon Dr. Seta Tutunjan, who is the director of program at ICBA. Dr. Seta, we heard, from Dino earlier, and also, from the high-level panelists, the importance, of research and investing responsibly, in research for development. We also, heard that, cooperation with regional and international research are extremely important. Also, the importance of aligning, the different, agendas. ICBA has been, in UAE, for quite, some time now, and also, working on research and development, agenda. What could be some priorities areas, for an LTI agenda, and also, opportunities, for collaboration, with ICBA, in the context of UAE?
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for giving ICBA the opportunity to share its experience in research and development of practical innovations. We're really happy to be part of this discussion. Indeed, as you mentioned, research report highlight that for every $1 that we invest into research, agricultural research specifically, there are the social, economic gains exceed $10. And as a country with limited arable lands, limited freshwater resources,
and harsh climate conditions, which were highlighted by Ala previously. Research and development can play a critical role to develop innovative solutions for sustainable food productions that support the National Food Security Strategy of 2051, highlighted by Her Excellency and other distinguished speakers today, in establishing particularly UAE as a world-leading hub for innovation-driven food security. And the strategy spells 5 broad goals that Armin's highlighted, and research and development is an enabler for all of them. It's already an enabler identified in the strategy, but it supports each one of those 5 broad goals. So if, for example, we consider the second goal of enhancing sustainable technology-enabled domestic food supply across the value food chain, especially now after COVID, where there has been even more focus on research and development can generate resource-efficient technologies, given our scarce resources. And whether it is for producing in open field or producing under controlled environment, and both are important because given particularly the water scarcity, which is a topic I'm very passionate about, in our region, where the top 10 water scarce countries worldwide come from this region, including Saudi Arabia, including the UAE, every drop that we use should be used efficiently and with no wastage. And we know how much the agricultural sector consumes water. Agriculture requires extensive amounts of water to be able to produce the food, but they also require extensive amounts of energy, of fertilizers, and there are opportunities for savings in those by adopting precision farming tools that help manage farm inputs. And when we talk about precision farming tools, we need to consider not only the large and mechanized farmers, but we also need to consider tools that support medium and small farmers. Because as Ala mentioned, even in our region, we do have small farmers and those need tools that are different than the ones that larger farmers require. So if, for example, I am to list a study that we jointly implemented at ICBA with the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi, with plant and food research from New Zealand, which highlights the need for collaboration, we found that we can achieve a saving of up to 50%, ranging from 25% to 50%, if irrigation of date palms matches the tree's actual water requirement. Now, given the amount of date palms that are grown in this region, if wide-scale changes are done in irrigation practices, this could lead to massive reductions in water use, but also in better use of fertilizers. Another example or a critical area is controlled environment farming, whether it is greenhouses, whether it's hydroponic farms. This is a fast expanding area in this region. And particularly in the UAE, with the introduction of the incentives to encourage agri-tech startups and innovators, we're expecting to even see more increase and expansion of this sector. So if we look at the figures in 2009, we had 50 hydroponic farms in the UAE. Currently, we have more than 1,000. And these technologies were imported from other countries with different climatic conditions. So to maintain the internal environment that is needed to produce, they require a lot of water, they require a lot of energy. And research and innovation is required to adapt these technologies to local conditions and to enhance their usage of energy, their usage of water, and to also, other than just adapting them, we believe that research and innovation can play a critical role in developing new technologies that are better suited for producing under the agroecological conditions of the region here. And one example at ICBA, for instance, we've been working on an integrated agri-aquacultural system, which uses desalination brine or seawater to produce agriculture. And what we've done is we've combined the current farms and what they're doing with desalination water and build on it to produce a modular system that is better suited for the environment here. And without the investment in research and development that extends over several years, we really cannot come up with such efficient systems. Another area with huge, vast potential is the selection of better suited crops for local conditions. Crops that use less water, crops that can be grown with alternative water resources, be it brackish water, be it seawater. Our research over the past 20 years shows that there are many plants that can do well with local agroecological systems. These include crops for food, such as quinoa, amaranth, sorghum, millet. They're not our traditional crops, but they are crops, nutritious crops with huge potential. There's also many grasses that could be used for forages. And these our crops are not only more resilient, but they're more nutritious in some cases. So, and this also supports the UAE's food security strategy goal in terms of improving nutritional intake. So if, for example, we take ICPA's program to expand the production and consumption of quinoa, quinoa is a superfood. It contains the 9 amino acids, but also many micronutrients. But we had around more than 11 years of research to be able to release the 5 high-yielding varieties, nutritious varieties that we did and that are now growing in many countries, including the UAE. So there is really a need to invest more for research and development, to invest more in such climate-smart crops. Halophytic crops are other crops. Freshwater resources are scarce in this region, but they're also growing scarcer throughout the world, particularly as we look to produce food for more than 9.5 billion people in the coming few decades. But there's plenty of seawater, plenty of brackish water. So there are crops, salt-loving crops that could be irrigated with saline water, including seawater, that offers great opportunity. Saliconia, for example, is one crop that we've been working on breeding and on introducing into the value chain and diets through collaborations with the private sector, with the public sector, by producing and launching a few Saliconia-based food products. And there are also halophytic grasses that can be irrigated up to 60% seawater salinity, and that require around 40% less water for their irrigation. But how to discover those among the pool of hundreds of thousands of crops, research and development is required. Another area for research and development is reducing food loss and food waste, which is another goal of the UAE food security strategy. And there is a lot of opportunity that research and development offers, a lot of low-hanging fruits, particularly in this region where there is a high estimated waste of food. Like, for example, if we look according to the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, the food waste per person in the UAE approaches 200 kilograms per person per annum, which is quite a high number. And as local production increases, there is a lot of more opportunity for local food loss. So research and development can play a huge role in that area. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Seta, for this. We have a second round of questions, to our esteemed, panelists. But as I said at the beginning of this technical panel, we would really love to have an interactive, discussion, with the participant. And so far, we have been collecting questions, coming in the Q&A box. So if you don't mind me, colleagues, panelists, I would go to the Q&A, and then raise, some of those, coming, from our colleagues. Maybe starting, from Seta, you mentioned innovation and in food loss and waste, and recently, Her Excellency Miriam also mentioned the importance, of that team for FAO, to look at it, more closely. We have one question coming from one of our colleagues. And the question reads as, how can innovation help in terms of food waste reduction, both at the distribution chain and at the consumption levels? Are there examples you can share and the percentage of success in reducing food waste? Back to you, Seta.
Thank you. So as a research center, ICBA particularly, we have not been working on food loss and waste. But one example that I can cite that we've been looking at climate change impacts and scenarios, downscaling them to local condition, to look at food production vulnerability. And one of the things that climate change would be affecting throughout the production cycle, it would be impacting food loss, resulting maybe in faster rot of some of the fruits and vegetables in the production. So there are a lot of opportunities there, but for us from a center that we have focused on is understanding better climate change impacts on the food production vulnerabilities, both of the source countries where the food is coming to the region to, and in the region would help us reduce the food loss and waste throughout the value chain. But I cannot answer to a specific example because at ICBA we have not been working on this sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Seta. I now move on to Professor Chowdhury from the College of Food and Agriculture. Well, our colleague Ala mentioned some of those, strategies we know which are lacking. So my question to you is again related to what we've been doing in terms of capacity strengthening for youth and also for the extension advisory services. From your experience and having been in this area for many years, what are some of those policy and institutional changes which are required for strengthening capacities for youth to be more engaged in the agriculture sector?
Thank you. The best example I gave was in relation to the Agriculture Academy, which UAE has established. So reaching out to youth and creating awareness among them and emphasizing the importance of agriculture and telling them about food security and engaging them into the process is a very good start. That's an excellent start. Providing them with the right technology and exciting their interest is another thing. But at the community level, we also have to work equally hard, because at the end of the day, it is the farmers who will take this. At the end of the day, it is the community that will adopt it. And that adoption, you have to become a car salesman, literally, to be able to tell them that this technology is really worthy of utilization and worth transitioning from the traditional practices into the high-tech practices. And I think so almost 0.6 billion that has been spent in Abu Dhabi just this year to invite different companies to come in and establish their R&D units over there is an excellent step. However, chiming into what my colleague Al-Mullah said, that we can't keep on importing technology all the time. And it is high time that to kickstart things, we import, but then immediately engage at multiple levels, all the way from the youth level to the institutional level to the community level, in trying to find solutions for local problems. And that's where the significance lies, that we start working to finding solutions for local problems. Indigenous solutions go a long way. However, foreign solutions do not have a long life. So engaging people, engaging at the academic level, engaging people to work towards finding those solutions and focusing on food crops and food production that can help as per the local environment, as per the local agroclimatic conditions, is what will really help. And very briefly, I would like to touch on that food waste. There are three things I would like to mention. One is longevity of the food. It will help reduce the food loss. That means we can have long shelf life. Secondly, awareness and behavior change among the users. And the third thing is, once it is becoming waste, how can we reutilize it for positive purposes? Very briefly, I was commenting on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Banu. Maybe I still, stick to that question about food waste and loss, and also, food quality and the nutritional value. We have one question from one of the participants, which is very interesting one, he's asking, are the agriculture products which are produced, with high technology different than natural, products, particularly in nutritional values? So this is an open question. Maybe Professor Selvaraju, you want to come in?
Thank you, Abdullah. I think this is very specific question, but actually, the technologies are based on the solutions that we would like to address, or we would like to, solve the problems. And this particular example, I can bring in the example of biofortification. Is there an idea of breeding crops to increase their nutritional value? So the straightforward answer is yes. There are some technologies and practices that can increase the nutritional value compared to what we can do it through the natural, without the advanced science, technology, and innovation. But actually, this is not to say that we have to replace the traditional systems by using all high-tech technologies and practices. The traditional systems and natural cultivation being followed by the local communities are still very important. And in a way, the high-tech can complement what is needed if there is a problem to be addressed at the local level. So biofortification is one specific example that can address the nutritional values of crops if there is a need, if you want to improve the nutritional value through crop improvement.
Thank you very much, Professor Selvaraju. I move now on to Dr. Ala. You mentioned earlier about strategies, and during the high-level panel discussion, the issue related to governance, to strategies, and then policy coherence was also mentioned as important elements of the enabling environment, among other things. And I think also you rightly highlighted some of the challenges for extension advisory services. I just want to maybe ask you to elaborate maybe for 1-2 minutes about what are those policy and institutional changes, more specifically at the policy level, which are needed in the context of UAE, so that extension and advisory services play a key role in facilitating and brokering innovation for food security.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, when it comes, to introducing and adopting technologies for traditional farming, here you need very professional technical support and advisory services to assist, the farmers to adopt such technologies in order to increase their production and raise their income, and to contribute, of course, to the economic diversification and food security. So the professionality or the professionalism is the key issue here. You have to build professional extension services, and this could be done through actually what we call it train and visit model. You have to build the capacity of your extension staff through regular training and continuous learning, and through strengthening the linkage with the research and education institutes, and also the private sector, and mainly the input providers. So you have to have irregular training and maybe monthly workshops that getting those actors together. We have to establish such dynamic linkage between the farmers and the extension engineers and the research. This actually will have like a double impact in terms of building the capacity of the extension engineers and helping them to work together with the research in order to formulate the appropriate advisory messages and the extension messages and the technical support to farmers from one side. And in the other side, they convey the key problems that the farmers facing and the challenges the farmer facing to the research on time. So the research can find solution to those problems that the extension engineers couldn't solve, and do the investigation and maybe the research needed to solve such problem. This is an issue. The second issue is, to concentrating the efforts for extension. Extension engineers should be focusing on extension, especially when it comes, to support technologies and innovative solutions. And we should not engage them with the other activities in the farm, like data collection or providing inputs or etc., because this will dilute their efforts there. Although these issues is very important for agriculture, to have the data and etc., but this should be another job for other people to do, not the extension. Other important issue is we'll come to the other side, which is the visits. The extension engineers should have regular visits to the farmers, sit with them, meet with them, discuss with them, listen to them, and also provide the technical support to them. If it's not possible to visit every farm, they could, form like farmers groups, depending on the domain of work, getting farmers together, have key farmers or contact farmers, doing field school, farmers schools or field visits or field days, to get farmers together. But they have to have, in touch always with the farmers, and have regular visits with them. This is the most important, issues there.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ala, you want to add something?
No, this is my,
Thank you very much, Ala. I have one additional question from another colleague who is asking, have there been efforts in exploring native flora to enhance our traditional and non-traditional farms, such as those utilized before the 1950s? So this is an open question to anyone who wants to come in. Any quick reaction from the panelists? Have there been efforts in exploring native flora to enhance our traditional and non-traditional farms, such as those utilized before the 1950s?
So at ACB, we do have a gene bank, and in that gene bank, we do collect native species. We have a collection exceeding 250 native species to the UAE, and we are doing research on indigenous varieties of wheat that are indigenous to the area here. Also, a few years ago, when halva, which is one of the local plants, went extinct, we went back to our gene bank and we reintroduced it in the area here. So yes, there are initiatives on that. However, research into breeding and into varieties is a long-term process that requires lots of years of research. And it is an area that moving forward with climate change, with biodiversity loss, is an area that we envision much more research to be put in. And I would like to tie that back to the question on nutrition that came up. So in addition to biofortifying seeds, it's very important to note that the agricultural revolution 5 decades ago, it came as a response to calls that were calling that there would be massive famine and hunger and we will not be able to feed the growing population. So when crops were bred at the time, productivity was the main concern. So seed varieties and genotypes were screened based on how productive they were. And based on that, we did the breeding. Currently, we understand better that feeding or filling the belly by itself is not sufficient. We really need to look at the nutritional properties of the crops that we are breeding and the genotypes we are selecting. So current breeding efforts in many international centers, we are looking at nutrition. So to give an example, for instance, for rice varieties, there are more than 130,000 genotypes. So when you screen and you breed to identify the mother and the father, initially it was solely based on productivity. Now we're looking at nutrition as we breed forward. So I would expect moving forward that we see more focus on productivity, not only on productivity, but on nutrition in the varieties coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seta. I have one question now on research and development. I guess this is for Professor Salvaraju. One of the colleagues is asking, or is just putting things in context, saying that the best research and development work is not always adopted by countries. What are those obstacles to the adoption of research results and outcomes in certain countries?
Thank you, Abdullah. Of course, this is much broader question. Of course, this is one of the issues that we are focusing on right now. I can tell examples in the context of national agriculture research systems, both at the national level, managed at the federal level, as well as at the state or decentralized levels. As we all know that most of the national agriculture research systems are either underfunded or the research is not really tuned towards addressing the emerging issues and emerging problems faced by the farmers. That comes because of many other recent issues like climate change, land degradation, and other things, both combination of adaptation and mitigation and climate smart agriculture practices. This is clearly an issue that to what extent the resources already being spent by the national governments can be aligned to address the specific issues that are emerging. And within FAO, we take the agricultural innovation system perspective. We look at many different actors and how these actors can come together and also contribute to the co-creation of knowledge. So co-creation of knowledge is the key word for us, and make sure that the research for development is relevant and also demand-driven. And so that not only the generation of knowledge and also how best we can efficiently communicate to the users. Of course, in this case, I don't want to say they are users. They are also part of the knowledge generators. And in this case is farmers. and how best they can feed back into the agricultural innovation system support services and also the national policy processes. This is a huge task, and of course most of the upper middle income countries, they have a very well established national agricultural research systems, well connected to the agricultural extension and advisory services, as well as the farmers to some extent, but it is not the case in many least developed countries. So our main focus is how best the national agriculture research systems can be relevant and how best their research is demand driven that can address the issues of the farmers looking at the emerging problems, and how best the farmers themselves can also be part of the co-creation of knowledge. So this is the focus from our side. Abdullah, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Selvaraj. I'm just looking at the clock. We plan to finish in 10 minutes. So I know there are a couple of questions, which are unfortunately, given the limited time that we have, we could not address them, during the panel discussion, but we take note of those questions, and then indeed we would reflect and then get back, to you more specifically on those, questions. Just maybe from our side also, with our distinguished panelists, what's your one, maybe let's say 20 seconds, key home message, for this LTI, project, based on all the conversation that we had, from the high level panel, to this, technical panel, in 20 seconds. Let's start with Professor Chowdhury.
Okay, thank you. Research, innovation, and technology are the horizons. This is the future. And we need to invest into it at multiple levels. So there's not one level where we need to invest. We have to invest it at the industry level, at the educational level, at the community level, at the governmental level, institutional level. And when all these things are connected very well with each other, it will be possible to bring tangible change that we are looking for. And it's a dynamic process.
Thank you very much, Professor. Dr. Sita.
From my side, I'd like to add that research, at what Bahan mentioned, research, technology, and innovation is a long-term process and requires long-term investment. If we enter into it thinking that we want fast and short solution and quick solutions without the longevity of really investing over extended period of times, we're not going to come up with real innovations that would really bring about sustainable and lasting change.
Thank you very much. I think that strongly echo what Her Excellency mentioned this afternoon about UAE endeavor, to invest on establishing a national research and development agenda as part of the national food and security strategy. Dr. Ala, 20 seconds.
Yes, thank you. Actually, we have to focus on actually having a well-defined strategy for agri-tech and building our vision on clustering and to create a dynamic linkage between farmers, extension, and research in order, to empower the technology or the agri-tech adoption there. And the other important issue is we have to focus on measuring the impact of research and agri-tech introduction to the sector. This is, a very important point actually.
Thank you very much, Professor Ramasamy. 20 seconds.
Thank you, Abdullah. Just focusing on the RTA agenda, it's not only enough to identify the priorities based on the foresight scenario that we may evolve, but it's also important to have or to ensure that necessary investment opportunities are available to make sure that identified priorities are implemented. And together with the roles and responsibility of various actors should be very clear so that they can seamlessly contribute to the implementation of the priority actions identified as part of the RTA agenda. And to enhance the efficiency of implementation of RTA agenda, as I already mentioned, capacity development on many different levels is critical, both at the innovation niche partnership at the local level, innovation support services at the service provision level, basically focusing on the institutions, and also strengthening the enabling environment at the national level that can provide the enough leverage to make sure that all the priorities are implemented properly. And then on top of it, participation of various stakeholders is critical. So that these are all some of the key messages from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much for this. We're still getting questions coming in the chat box. But let me just conclude from my side. Thank you very much, colleagues, for making time to join us on this important, project. Thank you very much, for your insights, about RTI. I think you've mentioned that, Selvaraju, and also Dr. Dina mentioned that, working together is key. We need to bring in all the key actors, on this process. It's a long-term, process. It requires, investment. It requires, capacity. It requires, governance. So it's been a great pleasure, moderating this technical panel discussion. Thank you very much, for all your thoughtful, comments, and thank you also to all the participants, for the questions in the chat box. We will do our best, to respond to your questions, and then also, to prepare a very short, report about this meeting. So thank you very much, and then Armen, I hand back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Abdullah, for excellent moderation. Dr. Selvaraju, thank you very much for your time and participation. Professor Chaudhary, your time very much appreciated. Dr. Tutujan, special thanks to you for your time and participation. And Dr. Ala Juma, we're always pleasure to have you in our discussions. Thank you very much. And as the panelist mentions, we have a long journey to go within this project. We have collected today quite number of questions, feedbacks that will be very useful in the stock-taking exercise starting soon for the analysis and throughout the implementation of the project. Thank you again. And with this, I am very pleased to pass the virtual mic to Dino Francescuti for his concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Armen. It has been very, very interesting, very enlightening, all the discussion that we have heard. I have some concluding remarks, and then I will give the floor to Fatima. But I'd like to know if Dina would like to address us ahead of us, just in case you want to address us. Dina, I'll give you the first slot for you.
Thank you so much, Dino. I greatly appreciate the opportunity because it was quite enriching to be with you during this time. And first of all, I want to thank you, Dino, for your leadership here in the UAE and in the Gulf, for the work that you're doing with your team. And I think we can see here through the discussions that happened today, the richness and the amount of knowledge that is available through FAO in supporting this very important work and the work here that is also being done in the UAE. So I just want to reiterate, as the resident coordinator, that we as the United Nations are looking to ensure that not only is innovation part and parcel of what we do, but that we bring forward the best expertise available from around the world to support the priorities here in the UAE and in other countries that we engage. And I also urge everyone who is listening to realize that without us coming together to address and bring forward our thoughts and our ideas, we won't be able to have a better 2021 and forward. We all faced what we did in 2020. We don't want that again. So again, thank you again, Dino, and to your team. And I encourage everyone to continue to follow us here at the UAE, UN in the UAE, on our Twitter accounts, myself and the FAO colleagues, etc., as we will be having more and more of these types of discussions in the months and years ahead. And we look forward to continuing this work with you. Thank you, Dino.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Dina, for this. Now allow me, dear participants and colleagues, let me thank you all for this active participation and engagement. We had over 100 participants today, but most importantly, with this event, we had successfully met our objectives. Very rich, in a very rich manner, I would say. We can state that the webinar appropriately served as a good platform of dialogue on the role and contribution of our RTI-related initiative for food security. It informed us about the RTI project that we've been discussing. And this project is being implemented under the umbrella of the Saudi Emirati Coordination Council. The insightful exchange we had during our discussions today are very appreciated and useful for the project. I would like to express FAO's appreciation to our co-host and partner, the Food and Water Security Office and the United Nations Resident Coordinator Office for joining hands on this event. We have been privileged and honored today by the presence and illuminating words of Her Excellency Mariam Al-Mahdi, Mr. Minister of State for Food and Water Security, His Excellency Maximo Torero, Chief Economist of FAO, His Excellency Serge Nacuzzi, Deputy Regional Representative and Officer in charge of FAO Regional Office. Let me also thank Dina for Her Excellency Dina Asaf as UNRC for being us today and reminding us of the importance of inclusiveness and working together on this journey. The technical panel has also featured eminent speakers. I thank you all. You've been bright, very illuminating. Your perspectives and insights have been very, very enlightening on how we can harness research, technology, and innovation. I do believe that we all have benefit from the wealth of information, ideas, and points of views discussed and shared today. We have heard from Her Excellency Mariam Al-Mahdi about the priority areas of national food security and the key enabling role of research, technology, and innovation. This is a strong signal for the RTI project of the United Arab Emirates and also for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Maximo Torero enlightened us about the FAO's vision on research, technology, and innovation. Serge Nacuzzi shared insights on the recent International Forum on Innovation in Agri-Food Systems. Key conclusions came out from there. The technical panel and the Inception workshop also provided food for thought and valuable information for the challenges ahead on the RTI project. Dear participants, this is the beginning of a long journey. We have heard this several times today. And as the quotes say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. I strongly believe that the event today has paved the way for this RTI project effort. We need to reflect upon and consolidate all the information, ideas, and points of view shared during this event and translate that into concrete actions during the implementation phase. We need to innovate. We need collective action. We shall work together. On behalf of you all, I thank their excellencies and all the panelists of making time for this insightful conversation. Your presence has been invaluable and without any doubt has contributed to making this event a great success. I would like to thank all those who have been in the organization of this event, hard work from the various institutions behind us. Thank you so much. Let me end with a quote of Henry Ford, founder of Ford Motors Company, who said, "Coming together is the beginning, staying together is progress, working together is success." Let us come together, stay together, and work together. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Fatima, over to you, Fatima Al-Mula, for your closing remarks.
Thank you everyone. I don't want to take up too much of your time. You've given us a lot of yours already. But I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, all of our participants and all of our panelists for taking place in today's workshop. With these discussions we have faced really, it has helped us create a foundation for substantive action moving forward. And of course, none of this would be possible without the input and the support of the Food and Agriculture Organization. So I would like to extend on behalf of the Food and Water Security Office and the UAE, my sincere thank you to the Food and Agriculture Organization. And say thank you also on behalf of Saudi Arabia to help facilitate this important RTI initiative, as well as thank you to the UN Resident Coordinator, Dina Asaf, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. The FAO is an essential partner in helping the UAE realize their food security efforts, and we work closely together to realize our mutual aims. So thank you everybody for your input today, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your time and participation. Well done. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Colleagues, really wholeheartedly.
Thank you, Dino. Thank you, Armin.
Thank you. Thank you, Dino. Thank you, Abdullah, Arman, and all colleagues.
Abdul, hi. Thank you.
Colleagues.
Bye. Bye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Dina.
You're welcome.
Really.
Bye.